Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Woke up today and saw even more movement with respect to the Saints quarterback situation. We know earlier this week the Saints made waves in free agency when they signed Derek Carr. It's been a big topic of conversation for all the reasons we've discussed many times over. Enter Diana Rossini from ESPN, who tweeted this morning, the New Orleans Saints have offered quarterback Jameis Winston a restructured deal to stay, per sources. Winston has until Wednesday to accept the offer because of the start of the league year, or he will be released. So, a couple of things to unpack here with that. I think we all largely have assumed that Jameis Winston was going to be a cap casualty. He would most definitely not be back under his previous deal. If he is on the roster at the start of the league year, his $12.8 million would become guaranteed, and that's just not going to happen for a backup. So, we've all assumed that the Saints would either release Jameis and save $4.4 million against the cap with an outright release, or designate him as a post-June 1st release, which would save them $12.8 million against the cap. The caveat there is the $12.8 million doesn't become available to you until after June 1st. So the league year starts next week. The Saints still have some $24 million in cap space they have to clear, then some to be able to sign free agents if you want, and sign your draft pick. So if you want to go be competitive and spend when the league year begins, you got to get within cap compliance and give yourself more space. It would be great if you could clear $12.8 million of Jameis Winston money before next Wednesday, but in order to do that, he has to agree to a restructured contract. Otherwise, you wouldn't get that money until June, available to you until June. So, a couple of things. Most obviously, the Saints have no intention of playing Jameis Winston. We learned that this past year. Jameis started the season. He was injured. Foot, back injuries. We know what happened. They held him out week 4 of the game in London against the Vikings. Dalton started that game, and we were waiting on Jameis to get healthy again and sort of reassume his starting role, and it never happened. Jameis even said, I lost my job because I got injured. And he was a guy who was brought here by Sean Payton. Sean Payton is no longer the coach. It is just very clear Dennis Allen made his decision, and that's his prerogative. He's the head coach. Dennis Allen decided that Andy Dalton was going to be a starter, that Jameis Winston was not going to be his starting quarterback, and so he will never be the Saints' starting quarterback as long as Dennis Allen is the coach. So if Jameis Winston wants to, he can agree to a restructured deal. He can stay in New Orleans and back up Derek Carr. That's his option. Or the Saints can cut him, and he can be a free agent and try to go get a better contract, better opportunity somewhere else. That's the options Jameis has right now. But what we know is if you bring Jameis back, you're not bringing him back to compete for any type of playing time. Derek Carr is your starting quarterback, and he should be your starting quarterback. But the other reason this makes sense for New Orleans to do it this way is because of the cap number. So follow me here. We'll unpack this a little bit. The only way the Saints could save that full $12.8 million is by cutting Jameis Winston but designating him a post-June 1 release, as we just talked about. So that money wouldn't become available to you against the cap until after June 1, so well into free agency and after the draft and all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't really help you now. You could cut him now and save $4.4 million against the cap, but there's way more savings to be had if you do it the other way. The only other option you have is having Jameis Winston agree to a new deal. He would essentially say, okay, we'll tear this one up, and you can sign me to a new contract. So you save that $12.8 million against the cap now. It's the only way you could do it now. If he agrees to a new deal now, you would save $12.8 million against the cap and structure whatever his new deal was to be team-friendly, kind of like they did with Derek Carr. So, but in order to do that, Jameis would have to understand that he's not going to ever have an opportunity to start. So if he wants to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, he's going to have to go test free agency. This really comes down to what does Jameis Winston want to do. But for the Saints, they would be perfectly fine, clearly, with Jameis Winston deciding he will tear up this contract and agree to a pay cut, effectively, to be the backup in New Orleans. That would benefit the Saints greatly, financially, and then also competitively, because Jameis would be your backup. Just go back a year ago. A year ago, you were in a situation where Jameis was your starter, and you unquestioned starter. You moved Taysom Hill. Taysom and Jameis competed for it the year before. Jameis won the job. Got hurt. We know what happened going into this year. Unquestioned, Jameis was your starter. You brought in Andy Dalton to be the backup. He was just going to be a competent veteran backup. Well, Jameis got hurt. Dalton started. We know what happened. You are undeniably in a better spot this year if Derek Carr is your starter and Jameis is your backup. That's it. Carr-Winston is dramatically better than Winston-Dalton by any measurable. So competitively, if you're the Saints, you would love that. You love to have Carr-Winston affordably because regardless, you're going to need a backup quarterback. You're likely not going to re-sign Andy Dalton. Unless if he's willing to come back as a backup and just be in the role he was, $3 million, whatever, for a one-year deal and be a backup. But if you could save the money against the cap, have a younger, talented backup in Jameis behind Derek Carr, you're better at quarterback and you save the money. So I get why New Orleans is doing this, why they're going to Jameis saying, hey, how about we just keep you here? We tear up this deal, sign you to a lesser deal, you take a pay cut, and just sign on to be our backup. Now, he may tell him to kick rocks, and I wouldn't blame him for doing that. He may want to go test the market and see if there's an opportunity for him to go be a starter somewhere and to get more money than whatever the Saints may be willing to offer. But what's the old adage? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you're the Saints, at least take your swing, take your cut, take your hacks. See if Winston's willing to agree to a lesser deal and come and be your backup quarterback. So my guess is, and I don't know, it's not like I'm out here talking to Jameis Winston every day, but my guess is Jameis did the thing where he was willing to be the backup. That was behind Drew Brees. He wanted to sit and watch and learn how to be a pro, how to be a great starting quarterback, to mimic Drew Brees and his habits. And he was a consummate teammate through all of that. And unfortunately, injuries the last 2 years derailed his opportunity to be a starter, but I don't think that means Jameis Winston has no intention of being a starter anymore. So the market may be soft for him, but in New Orleans, he has no chance of even competing to be the starter. Maybe there's an opportunity somewhere else where he could go compete to be the starting quarterback. So that's the decision he'll have to make, and he'll have to make it before Wednesday. I would love to see Jameis back in New Orleans, obviously, because it would help the Saints against the cap at a lesser number, and you'd have a very competent, veteran, talented backup behind Derek Carr as opposed to whatever else might be lingering out there, be it a rookie draft pick or some other free agent journeyman who you might just stick behind Derek Carr. Maybe it would even be Andy Dalton for another year. We'll see. But that's where this is right now. And the really big question for New Orleans over this weekend and before you get to Wednesday is going to be, how else do you free up this cap space? Because the Saints are going to have to free up about another $24 million to be within cap compliance. As it stands right now, and I'm looking at Spotrac, so I'll cite them, they have the Saints at $24.5 million right now over the cap. So they're going to have to clear $24.5 million between now and next Wednesday just to be within cap compliance. That doesn't even include the money that you would need to be able to sign free agents. If you want to sign David Onyemata, if you want to sign a receiver, if you want to agree to a deal with Michael Thomas, however it may go, you need to free up cap space to be able to do that. So Saints have some work to do before next Wednesday and the start of the new league year. Jameis Winston is officially on the clock. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.